Whenever I record an episode of Journey with Jake, I typically have an idea of where I want the conversation to go and what adventures I'm going to discuss with my guest. My next guest, Marcus Higgs, is somebody who has been on quite a few adventures, but we really didn't hit on a lot of those experiences like I thought we would. Rather, we chatted about his work with parents of preteens and what he is doing to help those relationships and our future generations. As a parent myself, I know that probably the biggest adventure out there is raising kids. Get ready to be inspired with Marcus Higgs. Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey. To another episode of the show. My name is Jake Bushman, and I am the host of Journey with Jake. This is episode 117 today, and I'm excited for everyone to hear my conversation with Marcus Higgs. I do want to apologize for my audio. It was a little softer than I like, so I apologize about that. Fortunately, we hear from Marcus more than me on this episode. Before we get into my conversation with Marcus, if you have not done so, please leave me a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast and subscribe to the show. I would also appreciate it if you would subscribe and like on YouTube if you're watching the episode on YouTube. That's right, Journey with Jake is now on YouTube. I'm still working out a few things, but my episodes starting a few weeks ago are now featured on YouTube. Just search Journey with Jake podcast. All right, let's go ahead and get to my conversation with Marcus Higgs. All right, I'm excited today. I have Marcus Higgs on the show with me. Marcus, welcome to Journey with Jake.
Get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you. Like to get to know you a little bit better and who you are. If you don't mind, just give us a little background on who Marcus is, where you're from, all that good stuff, so we have a little background.
All that jazz. Right now I am in the Bahamas. That's where my father is from. My mother's from the Philippines. I was born in California, SoCal, Riverside. And I studied communication in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama. At Oakwood University. Grew up in the Bahamas after my parents separated when I was 12. Yeah. And then straightway after university, sorry, messed up the timeline there, but after university went to South Korea to be a missionary English teacher. And the reason I mention that is because spirituality is a part of my through line, actually. While I was in Korea, I say I expanded my worldview. I loved teaching. And I loved conversation. I loved learning about people. I really do love people. It sounds cheesy, but it's the truth. I do love people. I'm curious about why they do what they do and learning about the human experience. But I didn't want to share what I didn't believe and still had a sincere relationship with the divine and so on. So I continued teaching. Went out to Saudi Arabia, learned about Islam as a world religion and also taught there in the petrol company. Came back to Thailand, got my next teaching degree. And then went to Spain, was there for a little while, and then came back to Thailand, stayed there for 7 years. And now I'm back in the Bahamas with my older parents, finishing off this leg of the hero's journey. You have to come back home. It's always a cycle. Taught English language arts in there, taught conversational English for a lot of it. Got to travel the world, South America, North Africa, Europe. And the work I do now, I feel I'm uniquely. You remember when Hulk talked about snapping the Infinity Gauntlet, and he's like, "I'm built for this." It's I feel like just my life experience has prepared me for this moment. Yeah, it's
what you're built for.
It's an intersection of things. Yeah, it's what I'm built for. It's an intersection of which I feel uniquely called to serve. So we could explain about that later, but this is my journey, and it's nice to meet you, Jake. Thank you for asking about it.
Absolutely. Good to meet you as well. So you talked about your parents, mom from the Philippines, dad from the Bahamas. Did I get that right?
Yep. Island on both sides.
Yeah, island on both sides. Do you have any siblings at all?
I have 3 older brothers, so I'm the youngest. And no matter how old you get, they'll let you know, and they'll remind you I'm the youngest. Yeah, but my brothers actually, they were all, for the most part, they were in university when I was growing up in my formative years. So when I grew up in the Bahamas, it was like I was an only child. But yeah.
And you talked about the spirituality being a through line for you. What do you mean by that?
So my work now deals with mental health. And the reason I do what I do is to help kids make sense of what's in their head. And the way I do that is Mr. Rogers said, if you want to help the kids, you help the parents. And I help parents open up their communication with their kids. Now, that's where the end point is. The beginning starts with a sincere prayer life. That's one. Imagine holding community or holding conversation with the divine, right? Where you're seen, you're soothed, you're connected, and you're making sense of all of this world in open conversation. That's the first thing I'll say. Second thing I'll say is having a community of trustworthy people around you, where you're, the work that I do, I call it BYOB, bring your own beliefs, but people who are part of a community of faith, before social media, where you're actually doing acts of service for other people, you're having that connection, that community, and you're actually doing it in a place where you're solidifying your identity. You're a peculiar person, but you're okay being peculiar. So you start to lean into yourself. You start to trust yourself and have more confidence. And it's not dogmatic. It's not like I'm beating you over the head by saying you have to believe what I believe. It's rather, I believe this and I know why I believe this because it helps me stay regulated. It grounds me. It gets me connected and so on. I believe as a young man, having that sincere prayer life is what kept me along this journey when my integrity was tested. And that's not to say everything was perfect, but I mean, it's knowing there's a faithful, grounded, something greater than me, something bigger than me that I can come to and work out what I need to work out. Yeah, I guess we could get deeper into it, but I mean, that's an overview of what has kept me on this journey. Yeah.
No, and I love it because I love hearing people's stories and things that mean a lot to them. And I think a lot of it is that belief. Something you said about that really struck me was the idea of service. And I think a lot of times people think of, when they think of your faith or whatever, think it's a certain religion or whatever. I think when we're in the service of others, though, that's when we're really serving God or helping, the divine, so to speak. So I love hearing that. And it looks like that's what you've done. You've gone out and served. You're a teacher. And I kind of want to dive into some of these places you've been and some of the things you've learned, because you said South Korea, you talked about Spain, you talked about all kinds of places that you've gone and you've taught as an English teacher. Is that kind of what got you interested? Because you also did you're a communications major from college. Is that kind of what got you interested in knowing what these kids, what's going on in these kids' minds and trying to help them through the parents?
Yes. And another aspect of my origin story is when I came to the Bahamas, my father and I had a contentious relationship. And understandably, not to blame, shame, or complain about him, but he just didn't have the skills to meet my needs of where I was at as an adolescent. And a lot of my work is being an advocate for kids to be like, hey, this is what they're thinking. This is what they're going through. This is how you open up the conversation for them. Now, never in my mind did I doubt if my father loved me. However, in retrospect, I could say he loved me as best he could in the way he could. And there was no physical abuse, not that. There was misalignment of communication. I say I work with human development. So I am a life coach, yeah, but I work with a specific type of parent, a parent of preteens. And what it is, I study human development, and I found the intersection of what kids are going through around the world. Yeah, what is happening at this stage in their life, and how we can actually have them have better experiences transitioning into adulthood. And there's a common thing that's happening at this age. Yeah.
Let's define preteens then, because I think of a preteen, I think of Yeah, 12-year-old, 11, 12-year-old. Is that kind of, am I in the right ballpark there?
Yeah. So there's a window of development. Actually, when you look at fifth, sixth, and seventh graders, you'll see like one who hasn't gotten a growth spurt yet, and they're like a little, well, they're a runt. Not to say that, but they're a short kid, you know. And then you see this next person who looks like a grown man
In the same grade? Yeah.
in the same grade, right? And so we have a window of maybe about 10 to 14, and kids are developing actually sooner than they used to. Uh, we could talk about what's in the food. However, also having access to social media quicker, because what they're doing is as they get devices sooner, they're open to new perspectives, new points of view. So it's supposed to happen at this stage where where they're starting to. Let me pause real quick, just to walk through it real quickly. They're dependent, held close by their parents up until about 10 years old, and then it's natural for primates to push away their offspring, to say, hey, you're still secure, you're still loved, but you need to become independent. Independence is not the final form. Finally, we're interdependence. That's, I promise to take care of me to be in service to you, if you promise to take care of you to be in service to me. And in that independence, first pushing, that breaking moment, that's where they're looking for other points of views. And actually, that's where they start to mistrust, or they start to question, why am I being pushed away? Or they start to say, yeah, let me go explore this because what you're saying is not right. And that's where all that contention comes from. If we don't understand what is happening at this stage of development, like the kid, ideally, we want them to experience this world, to go try new things. And that's why their higher highs and their lower lows in regards to their emotion. Plus, they're also trying to figure it out. So they're trying to test everything because they don't know what to trust. And that's why this stage of development is it's a firecracker going off. But if you know what to expect in that firecracker, you can receive it better.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's like a big deal of that age. You know, when I think about it, I have four kids who are all kind of, I have a daughter who's 14, so she's still kind of on the edge of it, but for the most part, the other ones are past it. But yeah, that's like a lot can happen in those few years of being a preteen.
And the formative years, you're laying down your first perspective shift of the world. And yeah, it's going to set the lens for how you see a lot of things after that. A lot of this life is about managing stress, how you respond to stress, and you can set the framework or the lens by which they see and how they relate to stress at this part of their life.
Interesting. And I know we're going to kind of jump into some of your adventures in some of these other countries and things, but this is fascinating talking about this. So I want to keep asking some questions about this.
Yeah.
Is there a certain type of, I don't know if that's the right word, but the parents that you deal with? I'm guessing because this has got to be, you got to have parents from all kinds of different backgrounds and stuff, you know, from affluent parents to parents that aren't as affluent. Can you kind of give me a little bit about the parent side of it?
Yeah. When I was in Thailand, I actually came out of the classroom and I was a mentor for affluent families. I wanted to do something that I could have a larger reach. Yeah, do something online also where I could be location independent. Now, there's actually this book by Madeline Levine called The Price of Privilege. One thing that I'm noticing of affluent families, I was going to say families in America, you know the difference between those who grew up in humble means and those who are affluent? It's convenience. If the money ain't funny and you could pay for this thing to be removed from you, it can be. However, when you grow up with that convenience, you start to complain more. You start to not have as much gratitude. You start to take things for granted. Now, the type of parents that I ideally like to work with are those who are faith-based, right? And again, I say that just because there's a built-in community element to faith. And that's why I say it's BYOB, bring your own beliefs. The difference between beliefs and values are beliefs are what you think are true, values are what you think are important. And if well-being is important to you, you're in alignment with me. Let's go. I work with people who can see the potential in their kids. And the reason I say that is when we're asked to describe our kids, the human brain. There's this book by Ellen Galansky called The Breakthrough Years. Oftentimes, parents use disempowering words to describe their kids. Crazy, immature, or, wild and unruly. And I'm not here to try to convince your kid that they're a pocket of potentiality, like something that I think there's something amazing there that we can cultivate, There's this poem I wrote called Dear Child of Mine, You're Worthy of Being. And my friend asked me, he said, do you think, there's a wild tangent, but do you think Hitler was worthy of being? And I told him, I said, first of all, I'm not going to argue for the Holocaust, but I teach fifth graders now. When I was teaching, I said, I teach fifth graders, and I've never met a fifth. And I said, I know Hitler was once a fifth grader, and I've never met a fifth grader who I didn't think was worthy of being. It's something that we cultivate in our communities, in our societies, and we are collectively a part of that, right? I'm starting to ramble, I feel, right now. But to your point, what type of parents do I work with?
Yeah.
Once you see the potential inside their kids, yeah, it doesn't matter your economic or socioeconomic background, because it's about setting up the communication. Be mindful of the words in which you speak to kids, for in time that's the voice with which they speak to themselves. So if you can open up that communication and you get that flowing in their head, yeah, it's we are the stories we tell ourselves. So I help parents tell more empowering stories to their kid, that when they're out of their presence, they can still tell themselves those stories.
It's impressive that parents are willing to reach out for that help. I'm impressed by those parents who are willing to do that, because that's got to take a little bit of humility on their end to actually reach out to get that help. And so I think that's impressive that some parents are willing to do that.
Well, two things. I'm testing a beta program now. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. I've done this. This is the work that I do in the classroom as a high school teacher and as a mentor. I'm just trying to give these gifts to these parents. I'm testing this out, this framework that I have. That's one. But two, I remember a guy, he said to me, he said, can't I just talk to my kids? And I said, if the service that I'm offering, like if it doesn't resonate with you, then by all means, like talk with your kids. I'm not forcing you. And I said, it's easy to lose weight and be fit. You eat fewer calories and you exercise. To be wealthy, you earn more money and you live below your means. I said, these are simple in principle. However, you'd be amazed at why are we having the mental health epidemic that we're having now? And I think I've cracked that code. And this is what I'm offering to the market.
It's awesome. So you teach high school. You still teach high school to this day? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm a substitute teacher for the international school here in the Bahamas. There's this concept called micro schools, and I'm offering a service of teaching virtues and values to them. This is a course that I'm trying to put together. And the reason is traditional education, I'm not putting my eggs in that basket. Like, I really didn't like the whole vibe and feel of controlling. That's the whole energy that I got from traditional education. I have the skill of teaching, and that's what I do with parents. I help to teach them the skills of communication, specifically with this age. So same skills, different audience.
What were your experiences like teaching in different countries? And I know you taught a lot of English, things like that. Any particular experiences or stories from the different places you've been and what that was like?
Well, one thing that I always get is people want to touch my afro. Understandably, right? They're curious, they're interested. So I'm not mad at it. Yeah, this kid touched me. He goes, "Oh, it's so soft." They used to call me Poktamori, like bomb head. But yeah, what else? One thing that happened in Thailand, and I was with some Korean students. They lived in Thailand, grew up in Thailand, but they're Korean students. And I did the same exercise in Saudi Arabia with my students there. They were saying something about Americans. And then I said, if you had to describe specifically Black Americans, I said, how would you describe them? And they gave out all these, what we would call stereotypes. And I said, where did you get that understanding? They said, from YouTube. I said, okay, now, if they had to describe you, into the Koreans, I said, if you had to describe Korean, or if they had to describe Saudis, what would they say? And they gave me all these stereotypes. And then I said, well, is that true? And he said, no. And I said, well, why do you think what you think about Black Americans is true? And it's just, for me, what that showed was, yeah, we are the stories we tell ourselves, but we really don't know somebody's story until we sit down and talk with them. And that's
Absolutely.
that's why, yeah, that's why I say BYOB, but like bring your own beliefs. I've spent time in Utah. I have friends of, yeah, LDS faith, and like, people are people. When you meet them, there are going to be some things that rub you the wrong way. There are going to be some things that just resonate with you, and you really don't know anybody until you sit with them. Yeah,
Definitely. No, and that's why I love doing this podcast. I get to meet all kinds of great people like yourself, see what you're doing, what you're up to. One of the things too I
yeah.
want to know, and you again, you've been all over the place. You've done, some neat things, and you're doing some things, and I like that you're beta testing this thing and trying this out and trying to provide a service to people, which I think is awesome. Talk to me about the hero's journey. Kind of what is the hero's journey? Because I have a mentor, a guy named Chip Franks, who always talks about the hero's journey, but I kind of want to hear it from your
Yeah.
perspective and what it is and kind of what it is that you're going through with the hero's journey.
Awesome. So the hero's journey was put together by Joseph Campbell. He was looking at, again, all cultures, again, saying this is a common thing that we go through. There's also this other guy named Rupert Steiner who looks at it. He started the Waldorf schools. If you get deep into there, the hero's journey really is life continually asking us, who are you? And that's what life is. Life is, know thyself and you'll understand the secrets of gods and men. You're going to go through stressors, and at each breaking point, the question is going to be, who are you? And if we look at a lifetime in the hero's journey, we start off in a safe place that's familiar, and we're called to adventure. We meet a mentor or a guide who says, hey, I've gone this way before. Take this, it will help you along the way. Then we leave that mentor. That mentor could be a coach, our parents, just somebody who's gone this way before. We get a band of friends. Now, this is the thing, right? If we map it onto someone's life, at the first breaking, at adolescence, they say, I'm not a boy. And then you meet your peer group, and you start to identify with your peers. And life says, who are you? And then you say, oh no, I'm not like these people. And life constantly says, I didn't ask you what you're not. I asked you, who are you? Eventually, you have to say, I am. And that's when you step into your identity and you say, I am. And then you come back to that home and you have changed. That home has stayed the same, but it's new and brand new for you. And you actually go through the cycle again and again and again, because as you became a young man, you had a new identity, Jake. But then as you got married, you had a new identity. As you had each kid, you had a new identity. And life is continually asking, who are you? Who are you? And you go through the cycle again and again and again. Yeah. So that's what the hero journey means for me. And it really especially resonates with me coming back home to my father with the skills that I learned in communication, to have to serve him in his older age with my stepmother. She had a stroke and so on. And the person I've changed into, that deep introspection and understanding. Yeah, that's my journey. And I want to serve the world with it.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. And how is that relationship with your father now?
It is. Thank you. You know what it is? Eventually, life teaches you that it's not the thing, it's your relationship with it. One of our, we have more open conversations now. And one of the things that came up recently was he said, oh, you're always trying to change me. And I said, no, I'm never trying to change you. Like, I want you to express and be you and as fully as you can be. And we'll work with what is. And it's a refinement for me. It's a rebuffing for me. Let's just say I'm a very patient person because of what he's been in my life. and it's learning how to, I mean, yeah, he's taught me a lot. I'll say this. This time on the way back, one of the skills I picked up was virtue spotting. And what virtue spotting is, there's a thing that I practice called virtues and values. Values are what you believe are important. Virtues are the characteristic traits by which you're working towards well-being. And when I meet a person, I'm looking for their virtues. I'm starting to be more forgiving to my father for his faults and for ways in which he's fallen short. But then by noticing in ways in which he's gone above and beyond I could ever ask for. This is his book here. It's Barefoot to Boardroom. He's come through a lot, and I am a person of privilege because of the effort that he's put in. And I always have to remember that. And it's not Stockholm syndrome. I don't feel indebted to it, like tied to it. However, I do have to recognize that. And I come from a place of gratitude. Yeah.
For sharing that. I appreciate that, because I know sometimes it's hard to talk about those things, but I'm glad that you did. So I appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the challenges that you face now?
As Marcus or
As Marcus? Okay. We'll start with Marcus.
You know, I'm an introspective person. I do think deeply. I do care about people, and it is right now. I want to be at service to scale. However, there's a lot of BS or bad stuff out there, and I'm not against bad stuff. I know it's going to be effortful, so then it's constantly, well, yeah. If this is what was given to you, you got to go out there and share it. So then it's gearing up every day, understanding I got to do this for. It's a book by my fifth graders. I got to do it for them. Yeah. This is a book that they gave me when we're leaving, filled with like Pinterest quotes and whatnot. These are cute kids. My biggest challenge is setting up this program, like understanding my why, and then just eventually being like, yeah, no, it's, again, I get to do this. So coming back to that reminder, yeah, this is just taking the next step, and then understanding, don't be afraid of the next quantum leap that's ahead of you. Like I see where I can make leaps and bounds with this program, and it's just like, dude, don't be afraid of it. Lean into it.
That's good to say, but I know sometimes it's easier said than done. Is there anything in particular that you kind of practice or do to kind of help overcome? And I'm learning for me here too, because, doing this podcast is a dream of mine. I want to keep it going. It's like that. So what do you have any specific things that you do to kind of push that and kind of get over that hump?
Yeah. When I talk about the gifts that I've been given, and when I say gifts I've been given, communication, traveling, and so on, and my computer technical skills, when I realize if it is for the well-being of others, if you feel divinely called to it, go as hard as possible. I have to come back in prayer and be like, hey, not my will, thy will be done. And what helps me in that is getting out of my own way, I guess. It's fear of success, because I've done a lot of work to come up to this point. And what I think the success is just like, dude, will I be at integrity at that level of success? And it's just like, hey, you've done the background work. Trust yourself in that and get out of your own way, Marcus. And that's the divine speaking to me. And if that's the case, then take the next step. Yeah.
But I learned something right from there, from you telling me that, just in that moment of going back to your belief into prayer, going back to talking with the divine. I think that kind of struck me right then as we were talking. And I was like, wow, okay. Because sometimes I get caught up in things, and it's like when I take those moments to just let me go to prayer again and let me have a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. So thank you. I just, that's why I love doing this. I'm learning stuff from others, and it's fantastic. Sure. So what do you think the future holds for you, Marcus? What are you thinking as you move forward?
Thank you. People always ask about the origin story. Then they ask the mission, what is the moment here? But then what is the vision? The vision is to get this coaching practice off the ground. Eventually, I'm going to get these concepts, because communication doesn't cost anything. Stories don't cost anything. And my whole thing with my grade 9s was, how do I get them to teach the greatest story ever told, even if it's for an audience of one, and that's their life lived from their own perspective. I want to get this coaching practice off the ground. And I believe technology is going to take us there so that these skills can be taught to people in developing countries. One of the reasons we write them off in the first world or the developed world is because we don't see their virtues or values. And every person has virtues and values. It may not be in alignment, like what they value is different from what we value, but they're still virtues. They're still having a human experience. So I want to take these concepts and deliver them to families in the developing world, which I know, just if you look at population, Africa and India are actually the next wave because they have the youth of what's coming up.
I love it. It's a great vision. I think it's awesome. I love the fact that you have these goals, these challenges that you're going to face, but you're head on with it. I love it. So Marcus, I do want to, while we're kind of wrapping up here, I do want to ask you, because this is somewhat of an adventure podcast. I know we've kind of gone I'm not saying off the rails, but we kind of went in which is fine. This is a conversation style podcast. So I love talking about whatever. And this was fascinating for me, kind of what you're doing. Do you think adventure plays a role in anything? I mean, what's your thought on adventure as a whole?
Yeah. The thing about adventure is, and again, it comes down to preteen and adolescence. It's taking a risk. It's going into the unknown. And when you go into the unknown, the way in which you keep your stuff together is by knowing who you are, by having a place you can come back to be like, okay, I'm sure here. That builds inner confidence or self-confidence. So I can go out there to meet whatever is. Yeah. I've been on a few adventures and we didn't get into any of them on this podcast. But the thing is, I think that is what has made me confident, by saying, hey, I've been on an adventure before. Like I've been in moments where it was just like, oh my goodness, what is this? Show up as best as you can. Sometimes you fall on your face. Other times you get up and you still, bring a good.
As best you can. I love it. Perfect. Finally, to kind of end us up here, just a thought. If you got, let's say you have Mr. and Mrs. Smith who are, they've got a 7-year-old son who's, starting to give them a little bit of trouble and problems, and they're kind of feeling like they're at wit's ends. They don't know what to do. And I know you've got a whole program you're working on. That's fine. But just kind of something, just a quick thing of advice that you can kind of tell maybe these parents who are, what kind of advice would you give them?
For sure. It would be put your mask on first. That is the work that I do. I work with the parents for them to regulate themselves, to make sense of what's happening. Because right now their kid is not making sense of what's happening. And as the adult in the room, they set the tone. So yes, put your mask on first. There are parenting books that I could recommend. People say there are no books for this, but there are books for it. But the book that is most important is the book you're going to write. Now that sounds all philosophical, but you're going to do it your own way. And like I said, you will fall on your face. If there's anything that you take away from this, repair and reconnect. When you make a rupture, when you fall short of your ideal, starting off with identity, let your kid know, hey, this is not the type of person I want to be going forward. This is how I make restitution, and this is how I promise to go forward. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to build trust, and you're building trust at this age, and trust is built over time. So find strategies and tactics to build trust and maintain that trust. Look forward to the interdependence that's on the other side. It's a beautiful feeling. Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Marcus, thank you so much for coming on Journey with Jake.
Hey, Jake, it was wonderful to go on a journey with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to my guest, Marcus Higgs, for coming on Journey with Jake and sharing his thoughts on helping parents navigate the world of preteens. To get more information about Marcus, please visit his website, marcushiggs.com, and Higgs is spelled Higgs. You can also follow Marcus on Instagram. His Instagram handle is @HeartOfMarcus. While we were talking about Instagram, I would love it if you would follow me as well. I am found at Journey with Jake Podcast, and this is a fantastic way to see some clips from the show, as well as some posts about my guests, and just a great way to get to know me on the personal side as well. So check me out on Instagram at Journey with Jake Podcast. I have an exciting episode coming your way next week. I spoke with Nikolai Dotter, who is traveling by motorcycle from California to South America on his way to Brazil. He's actually in the middle of that adventure right now, so we talked about the first half of his travels, and you will not want to miss my episode with Nico next week. Just remember, it's not always about the destination, as it is about the journey. Take care, everybody.